All right. So it's 4 o'clock here, everybody. First and foremost, thanks for joining in. Again, I'm super excited to have all you guys on this Zoom meeting here. We have two great guests, two really good friends of mine, also really high-level coaches. And again, this is kind of an opportunity for you guys to have a platform to connect to some credible sources, to ask the questions that you guys may have about the process, and hopefully better educate you guys on the level that you want to get towards. So we're super excited to have Kyle Mountain. Kyle Mountain is the head coach of Neumann University, an NCAA Division III program here in Aston. And we also have Tom Peffall, an assistant coach down in Stevenson University. Two very well-respected programs. They play in the United Collegiate Hockey Conference, the UCHC. And these guys also, I was very fortunate enough to have these guys coach with me. All three of us coached together at Neumann University when I was the head coach there. Kyle and Tom were both my assistants, and they were awesome assistants. We had really good years together. I was very fortunate enough to learn and to grow as a coach with them. It was my first opportunity to be a head coach, and these guys were really big pieces of my success. So obviously, I want to try and introduce these guys, but again, let me reiterate, this is for you. This is the discussion for you guys to ask the questions. We're very fortunate enough for these guys to allocate some of their time to us. So if you have questions, use the chat feature. Just type it up. This will be, again, an ongoing discussion. I have some questions that I want to ask, and I think we can kind of lead the discussion that way, but be involved. All right. If you have questions, type it up. I'll propose it right to Tom and to Kyle, and then we can work our way through there. So as we get started here, I think it's always important to know who we're talking to. So I'll let Kyle, you're the head coach, or you were my assistant coach at Neumann, my home for 10 years. Why don't you tell me a little bit about you, your story, how you got to be so successful as a hockey player, and then how you got involved in coaching and how it led to Neumann today.
Yeah, great. So can everybody hear me first and foremost? Just want to make sure my mic's good with all you guys. Yeah, like Ten said, my name is Kyle Mountain. I'm the head coach with Neumann University. I've been coaching for about 5 years now. First as an assistant with Matt at Neumann, and then as the head coach about 3 years ago. First and foremost, I think it's great that you guys are taking the time to jump on this call. You guys are helping yourselves right now. So a big part of what I'm going to be speaking about later on is ways that you guys as players can help yourselves and really taking an active role in your recruitment and an active role in your career and where you end up, whether that's as a junior hockey player, a college hockey player, or beyond. Prior to my coaching career, I played hockey for about 20 years. Played 4 years at the college level as well. I bounced around prior to college. So I was actually at Malvern Prep Middle School. From Malvern, I started to make my tour around North America playing hockey and trying to pursue my dream of playing in college. First, I started in right outside of Boston at a prep school called Milton Academy, where I played for 2 years. From there, I went to New Hampshire and played for what was then the New Hampshire Junior Monarchs in the EJHL, no longer the EJ. And then from New Hampshire, I went to British Columbia. So I spent 1 year in British Columbia as a 20-year-old playing for the Penticton Vs. And after that, I accomplished my goal of getting a college scholarship, played at the University of Vermont, and ended up from there transferring and graduating from the University of Nebraska Omaha in 2015, playing for Dean Blaze out in Nebraska. So that was my career as a player. I was a forward, so I wasn't a goalie, but I grew up with a goaltender. My older brother Brian played at Northeastern, so I know goalies pretty well. I like to think, between him and hanging around with Matt for a couple of years there. But to wrap up here, just like Ten said, this is for you guys. So again, I commend you for even being on this call at all. I think you guys, it shows that you're being proactive in your careers and your development, and anything at all you guys can think of question-wise. There are no bad questions here, so please fire away.
Yeah, I mean, Kyle, I think that's awesome. You're right. I remember playing against your brother. Also, you had a cool childhood growing up with your father, who was also an agent. So, guys, if you're looking for a well-rounded, unbiased opinion, Kyle is great for it. So please speak up. Peff, why don't you jump in, give us a little bit of background on who you are, what you do, and your story.
Guys, what's going on? I appreciate having me on, Tens. I think this is great, like Kyle said. To get on here and educate yourselves, you're only helping each other in the end. And the questions part, I think, is huge. So throughout this whole thing, nobody's interrupting. I encourage you to ask as many questions as possible, gain as much knowledge as you can. And, I'm sure we'll say it again at the end. But after this whole thing, if anybody wants to reach out privately, have a personal conversation, Tens can feel free to pass along my info. I think I know Kyle well enough that he would probably volunteer to do the same thing. Little different path for me, to tell you the truth. I like to consider myself kind of a self-made hockey guy, a self-made player and a coach. Didn't really have a family background in it. Played it once with my cousin, got into it, was hooked from 6 years old. So the touring around was a little bit different for me. Wasn't too educated on the process. Wish I had everything, at my fingertips that you guys have nowadays, and a little more help. But at the end of the day, I was more the opposite of Kyle. Stayed around home a lot, went to Lansdale Catholic, played there, really enjoyed my time. After that, I went on to the Little Flyers over in Aston. I'm sure most of you guys are familiar with that. Played a couple of years there. Went to Neumann as a true freshman. Tried out as a true freshman. They were obviously a pretty stacked team at that time. So I ended up playing juniors while I was there. So instead of the typical path of taking off after high school and I'm playing junior, I attended school right away. And I played 2 years of juniors for the Little Flyers there. From then I transferred to Niagara. I was there for a bit, putzed around, see what I could do. After college for me was really the exciting part. I signed a contract in the East Coast League with the Trenton Titans. Never played a game, was on a roster for 2 months, collected a paycheck. For me, it was the experience, right? Like, obviously you want to play every day. It's tough. But to be at that level for 2 months straight and be skating with them every day at practice, you kind of see not only what it takes to get there, but more importantly, what it takes to stay there. Because at that level, there's guys in and out every day. It's a little bit of a dog-eat-dog world, and it just shows the competition that you have to bring every day. So it was a cool experience. Certainly don't consider myself a professional, but it was awesome while it lasted. And obviously my playing was only going to get me so far, but I knew that this game was something I could never get out of. My first year with Matt and Kyle, I was waking up at 5 a.m. and digging ditches, doing construction just to get a foot in the door to be an NCAA coach. So had to do what you have to do. Happy it led me to where I am. And long story short, did 2 years there with these guys. Absolute blast. I think we were a great team, learned from each other. From there, I took a different path. I went to the junior level. I coached in the North American League, which I'm sure is a goal for some of you guys. I would highly recommend it. We could talk about that a little later if Tens wants to talk about that. Unbelievable league, some high-level guys. But for me, that was a huge learning experience working under a guy that has won a cup in the USHL. He was a player, OHL. So a little different style with that guy, but certainly well worth my time. And for some reason, I ended up at Stevenson, and I had no intentions on doing it. Kind of went down there for an interview, drove down there, told my wife, no shot, we're not doing this. I'm just going to get the experience for myself. And here we are going into year 3. So everything happens for a reason. Couldn't be happier the way it's going. And obviously Matt was a big part of that for me because he gave me my start. So forever grateful to that.
Yeah, well, I think that's the cool part about kind of us three is we're local. We're born and bred. in this area. And I think that's the coolest part, is having these resources of guys that have gone through this process and found different levels of success. But also the important part is realizing that all three of our paths are different, and we were all hungry to get better, and we chose different ways. Kyle had a phenomenal playing career, getting to that Division I level and then moving on directly right to coaching. Peff had a little bit of a different journey, but got to play and got to be at that level of the East Coast, and then moved on to coaching from there. And me, you guys know my story, local Flyers, and then went up to Canada, played a little bit, went to Neumann, and then had a couple cups of coffee, put on the pads with a pretty cool jersey, and then moved on to coaching from there. So all of us, I feel, should be very proud of our accomplishments and what we were able to do back then. And I think that's the big piece that I want to do to you guys is provide you kind of an opportunity for us, me, Kyle, and Tommy, to almost talk to our younger selves, give our information, what we wanted to know back then that we now know now. Obviously, I think it's awesome to have you guys two go through that process and talk about where you guys came from. But now you're at two very prestigious programs. Kyle, Neumann, I know that like the back of my head. I'm very proud of your success and what you've been able to do. Peff, you're down at a relatively new program. Stevenson is really young, but you guys been able to find success really early. Kyle, I'll give it to you first. Why don't you give us a little bit of a rundown about Neumann, a little bit of their history, their program, something about your culture and what you guys are doing right in Aston here.
Yeah, so you mentioned the word culture, and I'm glad you brought that up. And we'll touch on a little bit later on with all you guys. But culture is an important word for us, and it's something that we're always trying to build, and we're always looking for the right people to solidify and continue to move our culture in the right direction. Because when it comes down to it, Neumann is an extremely proud program with a lot of history. Neumann started out as a team. I would say about 20 years ago. And when they started, it was, they were in the basement. So they had a really tough time building that program up. They had a lot of years where they struggled. And then the school, they made a decision. The athletic department and the staff at the time made a decision that they were going to really treat their recruiting seriously. They were really going to treat their culture seriously. And things turned around for them relatively quickly, culminating in a national championship in 2009 that Matt can tell you all about as a member of that team. So, for me as a coach, I want to make sure that we stay true to that culture and that we do everything that we can to make our school and our community proud of not only our play on the ice, but the way that we carry ourselves off the ice. So, look, as far as our recruiting and the way that we build our program, it is very much culture first, and we want to make sure that we have the right personalities. And with that being said, we really try to cast a wide net. We really try to get out there and hit the road hard, really recruit in as many areas as we can. And look, it's not a very big staff, but, we try to do all we can to get out, to see as many games as we can, to talk to as many prospects as we can. And really just make sure that we're bringing in the right guys. So the more guys that we talk to and the better that we get to know them, the better idea of who they are as people and are they guys that can really come in and help us. So we play, as Peff can tell you, in an extremely competitive division in the UCHC. So there are, very few nights off in our league, if any. So we have to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to remain competitive. And it all starts with our recruiting. And again, finding guys like yourselves who want to get better. They want to develop, and they want to help themselves with their careers and with contributing anything that they can. So, I think that moving forward, it only becomes more important to us that we get the right personalities in our room. And Neumann is a very special place to me and to both of these guys as well. And somebody who grew up in the area, had a good understanding of who the Neumann hockey program was. And you can see it on the campus too. We're a community that really cares for one another. We're a smaller school, which certainly has its benefits, where you're going to get people that look out for you, people that care about what you're doing. And again, at the end of the day, for us, it's about more than just being hockey players. We want good people within our program as well. But our goal at the end of the day is always to win championships. So can we do that while also bringing in the best people possible, the best ambassadors for our program, to make sure that not only are we competing off the ice, but are we holding ourselves accountable off the ice, being good citizens off the ice, and ultimately preparing our student athletes for whatever comes after, whether that's continuing to play hockey at the professional level or moving on to professional careers in other fields and starting families and whatever it is that a student athlete wants to pursue. So those are really where our priorities are at as a program in our recruiting process.
I think that's, I hit the nail right on the head. And, I'm very proud to have you be a head coach of the program that I used to go to, play for, and coach at. And I think you were in a situation where you kind of inherited some of that culture where there's a history to the program. And I think you've done a great job of prolonging that history and that culture that's been there before you, and to set the groundwork for, things of the new players that are coming in. And Beth, your situation is a little bit different. Stevenson is a relatively new school. Sorry, not new school, but new program. You have Dominic Dawes at the helm, which used to be coach at Neumann too, and I saw trifecta and connection there. He was my coach. He won a national championship in 2009 with Neumann and started the program down in Stevenson. So now you guys are at the foundation piece where you're building that culture. You're setting that expectation. You're starting to create your history. So what are some of the things that you think are part of your culture and your foundation to make your program and your team so successful?
Yeah, you know what? I think any good coach you're going to talk to is typically going to bring up the word culture and speak on that. I think it's no surprise that obviously the three of us have that mindset. Dawes has it. So there's that intertangled web of culture and having a good locker room. Stevenson's in a different place as Neumann, obviously. So a little bit of the background of the school. The program's just 4 years old. So super new in NCAA, super new into hockey. So Coach Dawes, who Matt mentioned, went down there after Neumann, and they asked him to start a program. And his thought process after coming back and seeing the resources that they were going to give him and the plans they had, it was hard for him to pass up. So the school is relatively big, actually, on the D3 side. We actually have the most student athletes in all of Division III. On our campus. So on the D3 side of things, it is bigger. We have roughly 750 student athletes, which is pretty large for a Division III school. 4 years, right? So there's been a ton of ups and downs. I came in after year 2, and I would honestly tell you that the culture part was our biggest problem. For me, I came from a level at that point of – when I was in the North American League, I had 13 Division I commits. It's a different level. You see a different style of play with the coach that we were with, or that I was with, and more of the excellence that was demanded every day by a specific coach. And I think that was the challenge that we had at Stevenson early is, you got to call a spade, right? In year 1, you're not getting the high-end kids that you want. At the end of the day, the realistic part of it was they were getting the people and the players that had nowhere else to go. And that's what it was. So we brought in 40 guys, or Coach Dawes brought in 40 guys. And credit to them, they did a great job of helping us start, get off the ground running. And they had a pretty good, these guys both know we played them in year 1, and they had a pretty good, strong team. They didn't have the best record, but a lot of them were ties and 1-goal games. For us, the biggest culture part, which was a huge learning experience for me, came in my first year there. We had, I think it was 20 juniors and seniors, and our freshmen and sophomore were our best players. Some high-end kids coming from good leagues, and our job is to win. And they were playing over older guys. So specifically last year, it was tough, right? Guys that come in, they take a chance on a program. They felt, not all of them, but some of them felt that they were owed something, kind of. I took a chance here. I'm an upperclassman. And these two guys will tell you that's not how it works. It doesn't matter if you're a freshman or a senior. You have to help us, and you have to have a good attitude. So we made a very tough decision in the beginning of last year. We actually parted ways with 5 seniors. That's kind of unknown at the NCAA level. But we had a very serious talk, Coach Dawes and I, about where we were going, where we were, and where we wanted to be. And at the end of the day, some of those hard decisions are the ones you have to make that are best for your program. I think it showed this year. I mean, we started off the year, I think we were 13-1, 13-2. Had a lot of firsts for the program. You know, we had never swept a team. We did it, or swept a weekend. We did it 5 times this year. We had never been ranked. We were ranked for 2 months straight. So for us, I don't know if it was the end all be all, but I would tell you my gut is when we change gears to not focusing so much on winning and losing, but focusing on fixing that locker room and getting the culture we wanted, that's when we started to have success. Is it perfect? Far from it. But I think we're well on our way. So the culture part is probably the biggest to us. When we recruit a player, you know, obviously we watch him a ton. I see him. Coach Dawes see him. We actually have a third guy on staff as well. He sees him. We'll talk and do all the homework we can. We'll dig up on guys, where they played in the past, coaches they've had. You know, maybe somebody like Matt who's done one-on-one stuff with you. We will do as much digging as we can because we want to make sure that it's the right culture fit. We finally feel like we've kind of started to trend in the right direction, and we want to make sure that continues. So I know in a bit here we're going to talk about parents too, and I think that plays a part. For me, it doesn't happen very often, but I love when parents go on a visit with a player because it gives me a chance to talk to the parents, kind of see the type of family you're coming from. Again, everybody's different. Everybody has different backgrounds, but it's just a deeper dive into seeing the person that we're trying to recruit and making sure they're the right fit. So for us, it ends up being 3 things. You know, we want you to have a good social experience, a good athletic experience, and a good academic experience. And if we can provide you all 3 of those, and you can provide us with a good person, and you're a good hockey player, it usually comes out to be a pretty good fit.
Well, I appreciate the insight. I mean, you're absolutely right. We're going to touch on the parents here in a second, and I think this is a good time to kind of touch on that. I think, you know, there's obviously different coaches have different ideas on the ideals. I think parents are very much involved in a lot of our players, my players' everyday lives. And I think it's good to see that they're encouraging the goaltenders or the players to strive for the best, but it's a fine line. You don't want mom and dad to overstep boundaries. You don't want them to be overly involved, and you don't want them to speak for you. And I'm sure, Pef, you can chime in if you want. I think it's great that the parents are there for that visit, so then you can have a foundation of their family background and who they come from, and also introduce yourself to mom and dad, because they're the ones 9 times out of 10 that are going to be signing the tuition check. So you want to make sure that they know who they're sending little Bobby off to be coached by. But also after that, I think, and for me it's different, but I think it should be the majority of the player is connecting with the coach and reaching out and building that bridge and doing the homework. Mom and dad are there to support you and to assist and to mentor you through this process, but they shouldn't be the driving force. It should be coming from you. And again, you know, as a coach, as a head coach, and Kyle and Beth, I'm sure you can touch on this. It's nice to see that when a player is invested and involved in the process. I don't know about you guys, but, you know, we'll touch on what you guys look for. You know, where do you look for players? What do you look for in players? And, you know, and a player that wants to be noticed, what should they do? But before that, I want to touch on, you know, when you're looking for a player and mom and dad are overly involved and invested, you know, how do you separate the two? Does that pretty much is that an end all be all? If mom and dad are the ones that are sending the emails and little Johnny isn't really involved in the process, is that pretty much end it for you guys? You know, what are some of the insights or little tidbits that you could provide there?
You want me to go, Maltz? Or you?
Yeah, go ahead, Pef.
So for me, I think you're spot on, Tens, and I agree 100%. Where I was going with the parents thing is to have them there to have a conversation. And again, see where your background is, get to talk to mom and dad for a little bit. At the end of the day, like you said, they're the ones at the D3 level. But one of the biggest things that we run into is tuition, right? It's going to cost you something to go to school. And mom and dad are usually, if not writing the checks, helping out. So they do play a big part in this. So I like to have the conversation with them. I also like them to know that, their little Johnny's going to be safe, and that I have always, and I think that's part of your job as an assistant, I take pride in having a close relationship with the guys. And I think that's something a lot of parents like to know and be comfortable with, because, look, at the end of the day, it's going to be your decision. But mom and dad are always going to put their 2 cents in and help lead you in the right direction. So I want them to feel comfortable with me, and vice versa. But in terms of the communication and stuff, I am not a fan at all if mom or dad are the leading component in the conversation and the communication. At our level, most of you guys are 18, 19, 20 years old. It should be between yourself and the coach. If mom or dad have a question and they want to contact the coach, absolutely feel free. But if I'm getting emails from your mom and you're a 20-year-old man, number one, it worries me a little bit about your communication skills, which are huge in this game. And number two, it makes me question how bad you actually want to be here. And at least for us, we want guys that want to be here. If we got to get a guy late that happens to come in and he's going to help us, of course, we're probably going to take that player. But we want guys that want to be here. And if you have to have mom and dad asking questions and you can't pick up the phone, that kind of tells me that I don't know if I can trust you for the next 4 years of coming in, living by yourself, cooking for yourself, exercising and doing the workouts that you need if you can't pick up the phone and have a conversation with a coach. Because there's going to be times throughout your 4 years you're going to be in the office and we're going to be 4 feet away, nose to nose, either having a lovey-dovey conversation or you're going to be getting it a little bit. So if you can't do it over the phone or a text message, that is a warning sign for me at least. So I would by all means encourage mom and dad to reach out with questions, to be a part of your search, because that's what they do, right? That's what they're there for, is to help you make the best decisions. But at the end of the day, you need to step up, take the bull by the horn, and this is your career.
Yeah, I think it's simple things. This is almost like a resume, right? A job interview. And there's things that we can learn from sports. And I think that's the beauty of being a student athlete. We're a student first. We're learning from all of our environments. And just like looking for a place to play is like looking for a career or an opportunity or a job. It's everything that you do in that interaction is really you trying to sell yourself, give a good perception of who you are, and accurately reflect your level of dedication and commitment. Kyle, you're probably, and correct me if I'm wrong, probably still very heavily involved in the assistant athletic director position at Neumann, which deals with a lot of the admissions process. And obviously mom and dad need to be a little bit more involved and invested in that process. There should be a line between the academic side and the athletic side. Do you want to touch on that? For me, it was always the athletic side was between me and the player. And the academic side was a family unit. We can talk as long as they want to, and the student provides you the opportunity to talk to mom and dad after they're 18. But through the recruiting process and the admissions process, there's a lot of connection back and forth between the coaches. What's the best way to speed that process up in your mind for these players to connect to coaches?
Yeah, well, look, I think that you guys can really help yourselves in your recruiting process. So I think the more proactive you are early, the better off you're going to be in the end. And that's how you're going to open the most doors for yourself as well. So I think that, sometimes players will make the mistake of kind of sitting around and waiting for their perfect school to come knock on their door and their coach to say, hey, we want you here. It doesn't work like that most of the time. So, and at our level, we can only see so many players. So we do the best we can to see as many games as possible. But there's been a lot of situations where, guys come to us and they'll say, hey, Coach Mountain, I'm so-and-so. I'm from here. This is where I play. I think I'd be a good asset for your program. And that's just how the conversation starts sometimes. So again, you can start that early. You can start that when you're 17 and 18 and 19 years old. And look, part of it is, having the courage to pick up the phone. Part of it is having the courage to hear no and not letting that discourage you, because you'll get no's. And look, as coaches, we get no's from players a lot too, and that's just part of life. So you may not get every single school that you want, or you may not get what you think is your dream school. I didn't get what I felt was my dream school, but at a certain point, I decided that I'm just going to make the best out of any opportunity I'm given. And I love where I went to school. So, again, you have to be willing to keep an open mind, and you have to be willing to put yourself out there a little bit. So parent involvement in that process, I think, is actually smart. I mean, look, your parents, a lot of your parents, I'm sure, went to college too, so they've gone through it, and they may have a pretty good understanding of how it works, and it can be overwhelming. So with the applications, the financial aid, the test scores, and everything that comes along with applying to school, it helps to have somebody in your corner, guiding you a little bit. And I will echo what Peff said a couple minutes ago, where I think it's great when parents come on visits. I think it's great to get a better understanding of who these student athletes are and the families, because it's not just about who are you as a hockey player. It's who are you as a person, what do you value, what are your core beliefs, and what kind of house did you grow up in. And it really opens our eyes to who this person is and who the family is. So I think that parental involvement on that level is very beneficial for you guys. And if you haven't yet, you may want to have a conversation with your parents and just get a grasp of where their understanding of the process is. Do they understand the application process well and how to navigate that, or do they not have a great idea? And it's okay if they don't, but that will just show you that, all right, I'm going to have to reach out and get a little bit of help elsewhere maybe. But I keep it simple from there. I mean, I am very transparent with players and parents, and I say, look, if and when, your son commits to our program, I'm not going to talk hockey with you anymore at that point. I'll talk school, I'll talk finance, I'll talk about the weather, but I'm not going to talk hockey. That's between me and the player, and we expect a certain level of maturity from our student athletes. So if a guy doesn't have the maturity to knock on my door and sit down and have a conversation with me, even if it's a difficult conversation, that tells me something about the player, that maybe, he's not the right fit for us. So, again, I think through this process for you guys, it's great to surround yourself with help. So whether that's older brothers and sisters, whether it's parents, cousins, guidance counselors, don't do this on your own, because, you're wasting some time and energy. But again, grab it by the horns and help yourselves out. So start doing your homework about, what programs might be right for you. What schools might be right. Where do you want to be in the country? Do you want to stay around this area? Do you want to go out somewhere else, New England or the Midwest, or, big city, big campus, or small campus? There's so many different variables that are, a part of this. And again, you guys will help yourselves if you do some research and if you ask some questions. Again, you're not expected to know everything. So being able to pick up the phone or ask somebody that you trust, hey, I need a little bit of help here. How would you suggest that I handle this situation? That's going to help you guys out. So any help that you can get, and the sooner that you can start getting organized and start getting a list together of, schools that you'd be really interested in, programs you'd be really interested in, again, that is really going to help you down the road. Because I can't tell you how many times I've seen older guys when they're 19 or 20, they're ready to go to school, but they've barely even started, and then at that point they have to take the first thing that they get, which may not be the school that they want to go to. Had they started a year earlier, maybe they got 5 or 6 schools that they can choose from, and then they say, this school is the best fit for me as a player, as a student, just as a person in general. That's where I want to go for the next 4 years. So being proactive early on is really going to help you guys as far as ending up somewhere that you want to be.
I think you touched on one great point, was always asking for help. And I think that should be better defined, in my opinion. I think there's a lot of people out there that are offering help, such as there's obviously positives and negatives on every discussion. So there are some people out there that are classified as family advisors. There's also services like, I think it's like NSCA. It's like an online web database that you can create your college profile. And there's different levels of involvement or different fees that you can pay for different services. But I'll propose this to either or, do those services, does a family advisor help and assist in the process? Is it worth the value of going down that road, or is everybody's situation a little bit different? Because obviously we all know everybody's journey is a little bit different. Everybody's attributes are a little bit different. Their opportunities are a little bit different. On the positive side, maybe an advisor can open up more doors, but for your opinion, is there value to adding additional services such as that and hiring a third party to assist with your recruiting process?
I'll go second. I'll let Mounts take this since it's kind of his family, right? Family background, kind of.
Yeah,
I would love to touch on it after.
Yeah. No, I mean, I grew up in a house. My dad's been an agent since 1985, so it's something I've been pretty familiar with, and I grew up around quite a few hockey players and a lot of college hockey players, so I had a pretty decent understanding. What I will tell you is that an agent isn't going to necessarily get you a job. Your play is what will dictate that, and whether it's a school or whether it's a professional career, you have to put the work in, and you can't just say, oh, I'm going to hire a guy and he'll make everything okay. Can that open more doors for you? Without a doubt. So we've actually, and as a coach, I've gotten contact from organizations like that or third-party representatives like that say, hey, there's a goalie out in Ohio, there's a goalie out in Minnesota, here are his numbers, here's his contact information, here are his grades. And the benefit to that is that they have a lot of contacts. So instead of you spending days and days getting together phone numbers and emails, that can be streamlined a little bit through a third party. However, again, the work that you put into it and your willingness to reach out and take on some of this on your own, I think will be a factor in whether or not you need any additional help. I think that for the most part, if you start early enough, you can take on a lot of this yourself. And obviously there's a financial aspect to these third party, companies that will do some outreach like that. So is it an option? Yes. But again, I think in your guys' shoes, most of you guys are in a position now where, if you start taking some ownership of it yourself, you'll see the results, and it'll take some time, and it'll take some effort and commitment on your part to, stay disciplined and stay organized. And again, have that courage to pick up the phone and call a coach or call a player that at a school and ask some questions. But, that part is on you guys. So Peffall, I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah. I agree for the most part. I think they can certainly be beneficial, especially in the opening the doors area. For me, it comes down to the player, like Kyle said. I've heard stories, and we deal with them all the time, of a guy paying $2,000 and he doesn't get what he wants, so he fires him and he pays another $3,000 to somebody else. And it's, in this day and age, I think it's two things. It's one, you have to be realistic, and it comes with age, right? Everybody's different, whether you're 14 or 19. You have to be realistic about where you are as a player. I think if you're going to be a high-end Division I guy, probably a pretty good idea to get one to help point you in the right direction. If you see yourself as a Division III average hockey player, in today's world, there's nothing you guys can't do that they can. So, of course, they can make a phone call. And, if Kyle or Matt are an agent and they call me or an advisor, I'm going to take their word for it. And there's that trust issue, which I do think is big. But at the same time, for our level, you probably can't get on either of our websites and find my email, find my phone number. And like he said, when we talked about the parents, take ownership and be able to send me an email. It says, hey, coach, I'm interested in Stevenson. Here's my grades. Here's my GPA. Here's a 3-minute clip as well. I just think that in a lot of cases, it can be a waste of money. That's my personal opinion. But I do think it can open doors. You just have to kind of do your research. There's a lot of people out there, especially in hockey, that are advisors and agents and family advisors. So just make sure you do your homework and you go to somebody you trust, whether that's Matt or, you know, reach out to one of us. Hey, have you heard of so-and-so? Do you think it'll help? I will be brutally honest with you, and I'm sure they will too. But I just think you can do the homework. You can see where they've moved guys on to. But again, at the end of the day, the bottom line is whether it's you emailing me or your advisor means nothing once you get there and start playing. All that is a connection. Your play is going to dictate that for yourself.
Sure. I mean, I think once you get into the school and you get the quote unquote commitment, obviously there is the trial period and making the transition to a freshman and then getting on the ice and then going through training camp and then being part of the program. But the recruiting process is so very important. When you're talking about, you know, hiring somebody, it's another expense. It's another added expenditure to mom and dad. If money isn't really that big of a deal, all right, it's not going to hurt you. It's going to be there as an added tool, but that's all it is. It's a tool. I was always, I think Peff said it right in the beginning. He was very proud of himself because he's a self-made man. And I'm proud of him being able to say, hey, you know, everything Peff has earned, everything Kyle has earned, everything I have earned is because of the blood, sweat, and commitment that we put in. We've used our resources, all of us have, to the best of our ability. But I really feel strongly that all three of us have really taken ownership on our future, our destiny, and did the pieces that needed to get done with the resources that we have. And I think that goes again into the maturity process. If you're mature enough, you're intelligent enough, and you're engaged enough to be able to do all these things, why do you want to pay somebody else to do it? Now, there's also two sides of that coin. Just like Kyle touched on, they all already know if it's a good advisor, they know what a coach is going to look for. They know that you're going to have to get your SAT scores, your transcript, you know, all the FAFSA information for financial aid, and they might actually already have some connections towards some schools if they have a long track record. So there's pros and cons. There's also the family advisor that can help and assist or open up doors at the junior level. I think that leads into that funnel of college, right? Obviously, you know, we all have high aspirations of playing professionally, and that's the top echelon. That's the high part of the pyramid. But for me, I think that the one step underneath pro is NCAA. I know for me, and Kyle was very fortunate enough to play at the Division I level. That was my goal. And whenever I didn't go Division I had recruiting trips and opportunities and discussions, but nothing ever came to fruition for a Division I scholarship. So then I made my decision to go Division III. And I felt initially disappointed. And I think that was more along the lines of the things that I heard from a lot of my surroundings. But once I got to Division III and I played at that level, and I saw the level of commitment and dedication and competition, and also found success as a player and then a coach, you know, I have a very strong respect for all Division III athletes at the ice hockey level. We played teams that are Division I. We played the U.S. National Development Program, 18 and under. We played Penn State. We played Princeton. You know, so we've had crossover games between Division I and Division III. Now, some of the Division I programs that are top-notch programs are phenomenal. They're really good. And their top-level players are NHL draft picks, and they're going to go on to bigger and better and sign their $1 million contracts. But the majority of us, right, you guys are on the phone. Division III is a very viable landing spot. Obviously, continue to shoot for Division I. If you have very special attributes and you're relatively big, pro level may be on the horizon. But to circle back, you know, we got to get to that next jumping off point, that next stepping stone. And for most of you guys, it's at junior level. So we touched on a lot about the recruiting. You guys are both in two different roles at two different universities. And I think if I look at the track record, I have a little bit of a different recruiting process. Kyle, you guys are looking a lot at that USPHL and trying to find some guys that are coming in that fit your program and your culture, and you have a little bit of a footprint in some of these junior levels and junior leagues. And Pat, you're doing the same thing. You're trying to build your culture, build your program, and you have your footprint into some other junior levels. So Kyle, I'll give this to you first. How do you dissect between going from one junior level towards the other and providing those levels the attention? Because again, we only have so many hours in the day, and we have a lot of responsibilities, and you're, the head coach. How do you divvy up the time that you go to different showcases, different leagues? And if you could give advice to where you would steer some people to try and strive to be at, to increase their chances of Division III, what do you think the opinion is for some of the leagues?
Yeah, so the first thing that I would say, there are good hockey players everywhere. Now, are some leagues better than others? Absolutely. But I heard a coach say when I was young, I was probably 14 at the time. I heard a coach who was in the NHL at the time. He said that there is no right path to get to where you're going. If you're good enough, you will have a chance to get there. So, look, for you guys coming up and, if junior hockey is on the horizon, a lot of guys will say, I got to play in the North American League. I got to play in the USHL. I got to play in whatever league. And look, if you can play in the best league, you should play in the best league without a doubt. That being said, just like with schools and just like I had mentioned earlier, I think you have to keep an open mind as far as where this takes you, because junior hockey can be a rocky experience for guys. I mean, there are trades, guys get cut. You think you're going to make a team and you don't. In a lot of senses, it is, sort of a professional hockey environment where they look, in a lot of cases, you're looked at just for your talent. And if you're not good enough, well, they're going to get rid of you. So, there's some resiliency that goes on there. As far as our staff goes, like I mentioned earlier, we try to cast as wide a net as possible, and we go to where the good players are. We will look around, the Division III landscape and see where the best teams are getting their players from, where are the top 15 teams in the country getting their players from, and how can we try to best emulate that. Every school is in a different position to do that, and some are able to and some aren't. We use the resources that we have. We use the time that we have to try to get the best players from the best leagues that we can. And ultimately, by casting a wide net, we will get that idea of which players are the right fit for our program. In a lot of instances, we'll meet and talk. And Peff, I'm sure you've experienced this, and Tens, you too, when you were a coach. We may meet with really high-end players, but if personality-wise they're not a right fit for us, we'll move on from those players and we'll say, look, you're just not a great fit for us here. So again, we understand that there is a bit of a hierarchy in the junior hockey landscape as far as leagues go. And look, I would tell you guys, have ambition, try to play in the best league possible. And those best leagues, those high-end leagues will certainly get more exposure than some of the lower-end ones. But, as coaches, we understand that things happen in guys' careers, and that, maybe a really good player for one reason or another doesn't land in the best junior league or the second best junior league, but they're still a really good hockey player. So that's our job as coaches, is to kind of sift through each league and say, who are the guys in this league that can help us? Who are the guys in this league that can help us? Who should we really go after? And every year that looks a little different. Tens, you mentioned the USPHL for us this year. That's not a league we really tapped into previously, but we had looked into that league. We had identified a few guys that, we thought could really help us. And, it's not something we've done a lot of in the past, but, we felt confident in our evaluation. So again, as you guys navigate the junior hockey route, if that's something you're going to pursue, you have to be prepared to, take what's in front of you. And again, you should try to reach that highest level as you can, but understand that it doesn't always work like that, but that doesn't mean you're not going to reach your goals. And again, I always go back to it, but if you're good enough, regardless of the route or the detours along the way, if you're good enough, you'll still have a chance to get there. It takes a little luck sometimes, but again, your play and your work ethic and your ability to develop is what is ultimately going to get there.
I think that's great. I mean, you touched on a great point about having faith in yourself and trusting the process. If you're good enough, you're going to get noticed. And again, you look at everyone's situations a little bit different. As a goaltender, and that's who we're speaking to mostly, I'd much rather get a guy in maybe a slightly lower league that's playing a bunch of games and getting tested than a guy that's playing in a higher league that's maybe getting 5-10 games. And I'm sure that goes the same thing whenever you're looking at a player or a forward. You're looking at a guy on a fourth line compared to maybe a guy on a second line from one league to another. That perception of what we're seeing is important, and how often we're seeing it is important. So, Paff, I'll let you touch on your philosophy and where you guys look and how you kind of connect with some of the players that you guys are trying to get to come to Stevenson.
Yeah, I mean, I think Mountain touched on it first. If you're good enough, you're going to be found. It's just such a small world that we live in here. Excuse me, I'm getting a water from my little one here. It's such a small world that we live in. Word gets around where the guys are, so that can't be your concern. Obviously, if you could play in the those top leagues, if you could play in the USHL, that's wonderful. But Ten's just touched on it. For me, I'd rather take a guy that's just out of the blue. Let's use an EHL player. I'd rather have a guy that's playing in the EHL. He's a top guy. He's playing the kill. He's playing the power play. He's playing every day in a high-end role, and he's developing. You take that same player, and he's playing in the NA, right? But mom and dad wanted to play in the NA. It's considered one of the highest levels. You get to say, I played in the NA, but you're scratched every other weekend. Maybe you play 3 shifts a game when you're in there. Maybe you don't even touch the ice, because that happens quite often at that level. What's really good for you as a player, and I think it's pretty easy for us coaches, I want somebody that's playing every day and being put into those situations where they have to learn, they have to adapt, and they're the go-to guy for their development. So, of course, you want to play in the best league that you can, but it's got to be about development too. I was lucky enough to coach on the other end of it in the North American League, so I've seen the two different sides of it, whether it's the college and the junior, and I just think there's a lot of players, right? Like there's a rookie played for me that Kyle probably knows pretty well. He was a little flyer. Guy put up 80 points in the EHL. I am 100% certain he could have played in the North American League as a player, skill-wise. But maybe he doesn't have the same role. So for me, I think he took the best path. In terms of leagues that we recruit from, at Stevenson, we're fortunate. I'm a full-time assistant. That's not very normal in the Division III world. There's only, I want to say, 10 to 15 maybe. And we also have a third guy that's a stipend employee as well. So we're able to get around. I myself do quite a lot of traveling. But if you look at our roster right now, you could start international. I have a Russian. I have 2 Swedes. I have a Canadian. We have a Slovak goalie, actually, that played in the North American League. But then you go to league, we have North American League players. We have NCDC players, CCHL, BCHL, EHL, USPHL Premier. I almost feel like there's not a league in the country that we don't have a guy from. And that's honest. And even right now, we lose 14 guys. So being in year 4, we're losing that inaugural class. So we had to start early. You're not getting at this level. Kyle, I think, would probably back it. I'm not getting 14 North American League hockey players. It's just not reality. So we had to really expand our network this year. And that goes back to what I was saying earlier. There was 2 or 3 kids that at Christmas time, they called and said, hey, I want to come to Stevenson. And obviously they have to be good enough and fit our culture. But them reaching out and telling us right away that they wanted to come, that goes a long way for us. So I don't think the league matters. I think it's excelling where you are and being happy where you are, right? Everybody always wants to go to the next level. And I'm not I'm the same way, right? Like I want to be a Division I coach. I want to coach in the NHL. but I think you have to be happy and be good at where you are to get to the next level, right? Everybody, I play in the NA, I want to play in the USHL. I play in the EHL, I want to play in the NA. Only way you're going to do that is if you focus on where you are at that time. It's good to look ahead at the big picture and set goals for yourself, but you have to excel where you are. And I think that's a big part of bringing it every day. If you're miserable and you're always looking at where am I going to try out next year, you're not in the moment. You're not focused on what you're doing to be the best player. So if me or Kyle are in the building that night, I think one thing we probably both like is consistency. And your mind's somewhere else because you're not happy where you are, you're probably not going to be the best. And maybe we don't come back to watch again. So my whole thing is just to be happy where you are, excel where you are, and be the best player you can be in that league at that time. And we'll find you.
Yeah, and Peff, if I could actually just piggyback on that, I think you made a lot of really good points. And you guys as goalies, look, games played in minutes really carry a lot of value. So as you navigate junior hockey, I think you guys need to ask questions of coaches, and you need to, be very upfront with them by saying, look, what do you envision my playing time is going to be like? And look, there's a right and a wrong way to do that. You don't want to go in there and demand playing time, but, to use an example, we committed a goalie for next year about a month ago, and we were down to him and one other guy, and we felt really strongly about both guys, and we're trying to figure out who we want to go with. And somebody close to me said, what do their games played look like? And the one kid had about twice as many games played in the last 2 years as the other guy, a lot of minutes, and had very consistent numbers. So he said, look, that's probably what you need to know. And that guy has been the guy somewhere. He's carried a lot of weight on his shoulders. He's played a lot of minutes. And again, like Peff said, he's a guy that certainly could have played, I would think, in a better junior league. But if you're the second or third goalie, look, not that many teams are going to be knocking your door down. But if you can be the guy somewhere, and you can get an understanding from the coach early on that says, look, you're going to get 85% of the starts. You're going to get 90% of the starts. You're going to be our starter. Well, that's worth its weight in gold, right? Because it's either that or you're going to say, no, I need to go to the highest league. Well, if you're in the highest league and you play 3 games by Christmas time, and then you're traded at Christmas, again, there's not going to be that many schools that are banging your door down, begging you to come play for them. If you're in a place where you're getting a lot of minutes, you're still developing, and you're getting that experience, that can carry a lot of weight. So as you guys go to these different tryouts, these different camps, and you talk to coaches, if they really want you, you can ask them those questions. If they are expressing a lot of interest, just like at the college level, you can say to them, coach, be honest with me. What do you see as far as my role on this team? Do you see me as a starter? Am I going to get X amount of games this year if I continue to play well? You want to be at a place where you're wanted and where they value you, and that you're going to play and keep developing. I mean, the best way to develop is to continue to play and get those minutes. So, like Peff said, it's not worth it to get hung up on the title and the league and, how good the league is. Am I in a place where I'm continuing to get better? Am I getting minutes? Am I getting experience? And am I developing? That's what's going to lead you to the most success down the road.
And I appreciate you guys jumping on the call and giving a little bit of insight. And we got some pretty good questions in the chat here. So I'll propose these to you. The first one is relatively simple, so I'll jump on that one. And then the second one I think is a really good question. First one is, for the first contact, should it be email or phone call? And should it be the assistant coach or head coach? I don't think there's a perfect ideal. I think if you meet an assistant coach at a showcase, that should be your first contact. If you meet the head coach, that should be your first contact. If you're going, in cold, I think, a phone call goes a long way. It's a lot easier to answer a call and catch somebody or leave a voicemail and expect a phone call back than compared to having an expectation with an email. Sometimes an email comes through, we see it, we read it, we hit delete, we never think about it again. It's very simple. A phone call goes a little bit longer. There's no right or wrong, though. If you are reaching out to a lot of coaches and it's the first couple steps, email's great. A simple template email. Hi, this is such and such. Here's a little player profile. Here's who I am. Here's some contacts. Can I have some time of your day to have a discussion about your school and your program? And then move forward from there. If you already have a connection, I think a phone call is best. Text messages is convenient when you're exchanging simple details, but I hate having a long-winded conversation with players between text or email. But either way, if you're building a connection and you're trying to start anything is better than nothing. So whatever you feel the most comfortable with to start, and then make sure you're just following up with different points of contact. The next question I want to ask, and I think this is awesome, and this is probably going to be one of the best questions we have so far. As a high academic student and wanting to continue classes in juniors, but not hurt my NCAA eligibility, what would you suggest? So if guys that are 18 plus that have just graduated high school that are not ready to make that commitment, Peff, I'll let you do this first because you actually lived this. What's the best way for these guys to keep their eligibility but not have to make that full-fledged commitment to a program until they're 19, 20, 21, and a little bit older and in a better position to be successful at that level?
So I would recommend taking 2 classes. That's my personal recommendation. Number one, it keeps your brain going, which is huge, to do something other than hockey. Every school is going to be different, right? So for Stevenson, we're very high on transfers, right? So if you take 3 classes or more, that helps you come in as a transfer. Now, all that does is separate you from the freshman application pool to the transfer application pool. But for us, we're trying, as a new program and really a newer school, we're trying to build our transfer pool. So that helps us. I think taking classes is your best bet. In terms of the eligibility part, Kyle might be able to chat more on that on the D1 side. I really don't have experience with that. But I would certainly recommend taking classes. Like I said, it keeps you going. And at the end of the day, you're going to have less of a workload. So you take 2-3 years off to play junior hockey and you come in, there's a lot of new adjustments. After taking 3 years off of the classroom, you know, you have to get practice in there, and when you're going to leave on a travel day, and hockey's in the picture, and it's probably a girl somewhere along the line. So if you can lessen your workload there, it's probably going to benefit you in the long run. But in terms of the eligibility part, for us, there's not much. You could take a bunch of classes and then your clock starts and all that, but Kyle can probably chat a little further into detail with that.
Yeah, I always think it's a good idea for guys to get ahead of the game as far as credits go. So if you can take a couple classes prior to getting to campus for where you're going to commit to play hockey, you're going to help yourself down the road a little bit. Like Peff said, it keeps you in school mode. It can, you know, it allows you to keep flexing those muscles, and that way when you do get on campus, you know, you don't forget, you know, what a notebook is and what a textbook is. You know, and again, if you can transfer a couple credits in, well, you've kind of hit the ground running as far as that goes. And as far as eligibility, we don't encounter many problems where guys affect their eligibility. I usually, our limit is 12 credits. Anything above 12 credits, 12 or over, you're considered a transfer student. But we've had plenty of guys that do that. And even at that point, they still have a 4-year window, basically. So they still have all 4 years left. And we've even had guys that have graduated in less than 4 years. So at Neumann, you can go to grad school and still play on the hockey team. You know, again, so if guys have that in their head as a goal or an aspiration of going to graduate school, not every school has that. But again, if you can come in with some credits, if you can take some credits over the summer, you know, between your freshman and sophomore, junior year, whatever that might be, you know, it's gonna either allow you to graduate a little bit early, or it's just gonna make your senior year that much easier, you know, and having a little bit more free time on your hands as you're later in your career. But I always think it's a great idea, you know, and it can even be at a community college. And every school will be different in what credits they do accept. So, you know, a class at your local community college isn't going to transfer to every single school that you're interested in or that you apply to. But again, that's something that you can ask about with admissions teams. So when you go to campus to visit, or when you make those phone calls to try to ask some questions, those are definitely questions that will help you kind of sift through and figure out, okay, are they going to take my credits? Are they not going to take my credits? You know, and it'll kind of shape up that academic picture for you a little bit.
Well,
I think Kyle just he's right in that in the transferring them. If you could take a basic kind of a math, a business, some type of class like that, most of those are going to transfer to different places. So I would try and look into that prior to registering for a class instead of signing up for a specific, career focused. Maybe take a more general class, so it's not a waste of time and frankly a waste of your money that maybe it won't transfer at the end of the day.
I think that's a great point. You could definitely go to a community college and get the general ed classes out of the way at a much more affordable price. And it lessens your workload when you're at the school, and it allows you to be more successful. But either way, just make sure you're asking questions, use the guidance counselors that you have available to you. If you're interested in a program, just like Kyle said, the earlier you reach out, the better. So that might be a great conversation piece whenever you're talking to coaches early when you're 16, 17, 18. Or if you're 18 graduating and they're not ready to commit to you, coaches will have opinions and resources to help assist you with that decision. The last question, because I want to be conscious of everybody's time, and I really appreciate Tom and Kyle taking time out of their day to join us. But the last one, we'll all just have a quick little 1-minute response. If you know you like the school and they are Division III, should you apply right away, and does it increase your interest to already be accepted? Or should you just wait to hear if hockey and academics line up? So should a player be proactive before they even talk to a coach about if they like the school and they want to go to the school, just get accepted and then reach out to the coach after? Or is it more commonplace for you guys to be reaching out to players, get them interested, and then help them through the admissions process? And do you have a preference?
I see both. Pat, if you mind, I'll jump first.
Go ahead.
I see both. I think it's great when guys are proactive and they apply. That gets everything moving on our end. That gets everything going. It makes our jobs a lot easier, and it is in your guys' best interest to apply early and to apply to any school that might interest you. So there's a couple of reasons for that. One, you're going to know if you're accepted to the school or not. Right? That's very important when you're trying to make a decision. Number two, especially at the D3 level, you get a lot of financial information once you do apply and get accepted to a school. So to give you an example, at Neumann, 100% of Neumann students get financial aid. So the school does a very good job of packaging it and making it affordable. How much you get is dependent on a few different factors. You won't know how much you get until you're accepted. So the earlier that you can do that, the better that's going to allow you to see through your options. Because you may have a dream school, but if it's way, way out of your budget and you're not getting much financial aid, well, you may have to look elsewhere, right? So if you can really, hone in on the schools that you're interested in, and you can start to try to develop contact with the coaching staff, if you can get your application taken care of, again, you're going to have an understanding of whether that school is a fit for you or not. And one piece of advice I give you guys, through this process when we recruit, we've talked a lot about, is this guy the right fit for us? Is he the right fit? Is he the right fit? Well, the school's got to be the right fit for you guys too, right? So that's a financial thing. That's an athletic thing. That's an academic thing. All right. So the more homework you guys can do on each school, on each program, and the financial side, well, you're going to find a lot of schools that aren't the right fit for you. All right. And you don't want to be late in the spring as a 20-year-old trying to sift through that stuff, right? Because then again, you're going to take the first thing available and it might not be the place that you want to be. So if you can apply early, if you can get your financial picture straightened out, if you can get in touch with the coaches, well, now nothing's holding you back except for the hockey side, right? The only thing that is waiting on at that point is that conversation with the coach or them recruiting you. But I'm a big proponent in getting that stuff, the academic stuff, out of the way with early. Then you won't have to worry about it down the line.
Yeah, I think that pretty much hits the nail right on the head, and I want to be conscious of everybody's time. So I'll propose this last piece before we say goodbye to everybody. Paf, I'll let you do this first. If you were talking to your own 17 to 21-year-old, because everyone commits and chooses to go to college at different ages. Some of them are true freshmen. Some other guys are 20. But if you could provide yourself with words of wisdom to close out this discussion here, is there anything that you would like to tell the boys that you wish you knew back then?
Yeah, I think, like I said in the beginning, is I don't feel that I had the resources that you guys have available to you right now. I'm sure a lot of you guys are doing Zoom calls with Coach Tens and working on, the fundamentals right now. I didn't have that. So I would say using your network, using your friends, as many people as you can, ask a million questions. I'm 33 years old. I'm a Division III coach. I still ask a million questions. I introduce myself to everybody I could possibly at showcases or see a Division I coach, go up, handshake, make sure they know who I am. So if I ever have to reach out to them, it was a good first impression. And again, just using everything possible to your arsenal to better yourself. All right, just ask questions, and use the resources between social media, having everybody's contact information online, being able to reach out on your own. It's all right there. We're sitting on a call right now with 13, 20 of us right now in all different parts. Use it. You got the computer in front of you. You guys are probably on your phone 90% of the day. Use it in a good way. All right.
Yep. Don't wait for things to happen. Make things happen. Kyle, you're closing.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think your ability to network and your ability to put yourself out there is what makes things happen. So don't sit around waiting for your school to call you, waiting for your dream school to call you. Put yourself out there, all right? So get organized, do your research, put yourself out there. And the last thing I would say is when you make a decision, whether it's a junior team or a college team, go where you're wanted, all right? Go where you're wanted. So don't just take a school and don't think you have to go to the best program. I grew up with buddies. I had a couple buddies from Minnesota. All they wanted to do was go play for the University of Minnesota. They want to play for the Gophers. I got to play for the U. Well, some of them went there and they sat in the press box for 3-4 years, and they were never really in the plans there, right? They could have gone to a different school and gotten significant minutes, been an impact player, and developed, right? You have to go where you're wanted. So ask coaches, what's your plan for me? How are you planning on utilizing me? How do you plan on developing my game? The coaches that really have an answer for that will show you they're the ones that want you as a player. So ask those questions and don't just go somewhere to go somewhere. Go somewhere where you're going to develop as a person and as a player, and make sure that you're always working to get better.
I mean, it's a very competitive sport, and especially for goalies, it's very, very even more competitive. There's only so many spots. I mean, at the Division III level, when I was there, and I'm sure for these two gentlemen, there's 28 to 30 players on the roster. You go into a junior program, there's 25. There might be 3 goalies. It's very, very competitive. So find the place where you're wanted. But remember, it's a double-edged sword. And if we're talking about juniors or college, there's 2 roles. You have the place where you're going and their responsibility to do their homework and investigate who you are, what you're looking to do, what your commitment level is, where you came from, to make sure you're a right fit for them. But you also have the responsibility that the school or the team or the program or the coach is a right fit for you. So that comes back to making sure that you're involved and invested in the process. There's a lot of pieces to this puzzle, and hopefully this discussion provided some clarity. And I really do want to say how thankful and grateful I am to have Tom Peffall and Kyle Mountain join us here, and all you goalies join us for a call. This is an unprecedented time, and we're learning and using new technology to connect and stay educated as best as we can while we're away from the rink. So I'm very grateful to have everybody here. And we're going to do it again next Tuesday at 4, and we'll have another good grouping of guests and another hopefully interesting topic of discussion. So everybody, thank you so much. Stay safe, stay healthy, wash your hands. Like I said last week, help around the house. Make sure you guys are doing your chores and making it easier on mom and dad. And Tom, Kyle, great seeing you guys. I miss being behind the bench with you, and I want to wish you both the best success and everything that you guys are going to be doing moving forward.
Appreciate it.
Same to you. And Tens, if you could, if you want to share, like Pep said, our contact information.
Absolutely.
Call and email anytime. Happy to help you guys navigate through some of this stuff.
Excellent. So, boys, you have my contact information. Again, you want to be involved and invested in this process. They put the opportunity out there. So if you want their information, you want to start building a bridge, having a conversation, or just using these 2 gentlemen as a resource. I know when I was the head coach, there was always that recruit that I really liked that I didn't get. but I still wanted to see him be successful. And I know Kyle and I know Tommy, their underlying characteristics is really what's best for the player, right? They got to win. They got to build the programs. They got to help kids develop and be successful. But overall, they're really good people. So if you need anything, reach out to me first. I'll give you their contact, and then we'll go from there. So everybody, thank you so much. Stay safe, stay healthy, and hopefully I'll see everybody next week. Boys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, boys. Take care.
Enjoy.